So I think it's time to open this up to questions. So we've got a mic that's going to be roving around the room. And let me hit table 9 first. The person right in the middle of the room with a question, the woman
yes.
right in.
I was wondering, what do you think of California, for instance, some of the tax-free issues California, state of California.
California munis?
Yes, and other tax-free, there's also funds
Right.
that include that.
Do you want to be run out of town?
Well, I mentioned doo-doo economics. Actually, doo-doo economics is about California. It's about, and it's the first time that I've dared venture into the land of potential negatives, I guess, in my home state. This isn't to say that the recent offering, the money market offering last week, they call them RANDs, and they came at 1.5%, and they're only 6 to 9 month pieces of paper. And we took a look at it. We passed, but you're going to get your money back there. But California is the lowest rated of all the states. It's BAA. It's not in junk territory, but it's BAA versus other states that are in AA type of territory. So it begins to tell you something. The deficit, the $26 billion deficit that supposedly has been corrected was really just a sham, and to some extent came at the expense of counties and cities in terms of their foregone revenues. The cities and the counties would say they were stolen from them by Sacramento, but that's being too harsh. The problem that we've had ever since Prop 13, and then with propositions in general, forcing an allocation, and Sue and I are strong supporters of education in Orange County, but the forced allocation of monies to education as well as Prop 13 in terms of cutting revenues. The fact is that we've done it, if you're a California citizen, we've sort of done it to ourselves, and propositions began way back in the beginning of the 20th century, really, so it's none of our fault. And it seemed like a good idea at the time. But the fact is that we legislate via proposition, and it's not a really good way to go. Nor is the fact that the 2/3 of the legislature have to approve ultimately a budget. And so California is not the golden state that it once was.
And I know there are other questions, and you've got to get out of here too soon. I just want to interrupt for 1 second. California muni bonds, are you a buyer, a holder, or a seller?
Well, the state obligations, we're not a buyer, but there are a lot of counties, a lot of cities,
right.
There are a lot of universities. The University of California, and they yield 5 to 6%. So I would simply say don't buy the state, but buy the local community, the local development project that you know about that probably is more money good.
Great. And there are a gentleman with a mic back there, so the mics have got to get to the questioners. I'm sorry. So right back there, you're standing.
Right. You spoke, I think in this room, a few years ago about the global surplus of capital. Could you update us? What's happened? Is there still a global surplus of capital? Is it gone? Where is it?
Sure. The global surplus of capital is really a reflection of a lack of demand. They sort of go hand in hand, and it's hard to see. But the fact is that that where capital now rests, reserves, and where money is going to, China, actually Japan, other surplus nations. Basically, these are countries with a very underdeveloped consumer sector. In the United States, consumption is about 70% of GDP. In China, believe it or not, it's 35%. In other words, the consumer buying things is only 35% of the total puzzle. And the reason is that there's a savings ethic, there's a work ethic, there's a fact that they don't have health insurance nor retirement nest eggs, and so they're forced to save. And so the problem really is, in terms of surplus funds, is that these countries are holding on to their money and not spending it, and that what the world needs to rebalance is for these countries, is for China and other countries to start spending money as opposed to saving it. So there still is a glut of savings, if only because the prosperous and the growing prosperity within these emerging market countries it is not immediately reflected in terms of spending money. They've never spent money. They're not used to it. They fear their future because they don't have a security blanket like we have in the United States with Social Security, and so these imbalances persist and probably will persist for a long time to come.
I'm going to do boy, girl. So Angela, is there a?
Oh, sorry.
So who has a mic? I'm sorry.
I just had a question. I had read somewhere that you have a relationship with Alan Greenspan, and I was wondering if you could give us a little about the conversations, the closed-door conversations you had about how he feels Ben Bernanke is doing, and if he feels he should have done some things differently years ago.
Yeah, he does. He's very quiet about Bernanke, and I think justifiably so. He doesn't want to interrupt, I guess. But he is very candid about some of the mistakes he's made. I mean, he's actually come out publicly and admitted that his primary mistake, and Greenspan is an Ayn Rand, is that?
No, Ayn Rand, right.
Ayn Rand?
Ayn Rand.
That's a tough one.
It is a tough one.
Her parents should have given her an easier to
They
pronounce
should
name.
have.
But he's very libertarian. Howard Rourke in The Fountainhead is his philosophical role model, which basically means that if left to your own devices, each of us independently would produce the best outcome. Working for yourself would make for the greater good. What he realized and recognized in retrospect, in terms of his mistake, was that wasn't the case. That each individual firm, whether it's Bear Stearns or Lehman, or any of the others that exploded by taking on too much leverage and too much risk, yes, they were looking out for themselves, but they were also depending upon the saving grace of Uncle Sam and the government hand, so to speak. So, his inability to regulate sufficiently, I think, has been recognized by Alan, and he is very candid about that. He's, by the way, he's a very intelligent guy, a very human guy, and Sue, I'm going to embarrass her again. Sue did a portrait of Alan Greenspan about 6 months ago. We gave it to him 2 weeks ago, and he sent a wonderful note saying he's got it up in his library. And so we like Alan Greenspan.
No, that's fabulous. That is fabulous. She's squirming over there, but she shouldn't be. That's terrific. So, yes, go ahead. A couple more questions.
Yes, you said that your total return fund is now at 186 billion. So my question, which means you probably had a really good September. And I wanted to ask you, at what point does the fund become too big to manage, and are you thinking about closing it to new investors?
We never have, and we've asked ourselves that question, I guess, for 20 years, and others have asked as well when we were 10 and 20 and 50 and 100 and 150, and it's a legitimate question. It really is. But I guess we say, the proof's in the pudding, and to the extent that you can continue to beat the pants off of competitors and outperform the market, then it must be okay to keep on going. I guess if you were an explorer and you reached, you were walking or hiking in a canyon and you came to a dead end, you basically have enough smarts to walk the other way and go back out and look for another way. But up until this point, the passage through the canyon has been it's been a wonderful one, and so there's no reason to stop. But I would hope at some point, if we couldn't perform, if we couldn't provide bottom line results for investors, which is really what PIMCO is all about and what the industry should be all about, instead of making money for themselves, that we would close it down.
Amen. One last question, right?
Mr. Gross, I wanted to thank you for sharing the insights. We just got $1 million for the student fund at Chapman, so we're definitely going to try to use some of that knowledge and multiply it. My question was, how do you see organizations like BlackRock disentangling and adding liquidity to the so-called toxic assets?
In terms of distressed mortgages and those types of things. Well, PIMCO's done some of that too. We have a distressed mortgage fund, and in effect, that's what the Treasury and the Fed have encouraged with many of these new programs. I mean, the government can't do it all. What they really want is the private market to regain their animal spirits and to be willing to take risk. And to the extent that programs such as the TALF and the PPIF and all of the other programs that even I unbelievably have to have a little cheat sheet next to my chair to see what the hell these things really mean. But the government has encouraged private participation via cheap financing and cheap leverage, and to a certain extent the private market investors from BlackRock and PIMCO and others have come in and sort of taken the bait. The hope is, of course, is that the bait doesn't hook. You're not permanently hooked and pulled aboard the boat, so to speak. I think we're at a point where the financial markets have stabilized, with the exception of commercial real estate. Sorry for some of you those out there that are still involved in that, but 2010 will be a bad year for commercial real estate, and the municipal market again. Municipalities throughout this country, mainly the states, are over-levered, under-budgeted, desperate for money, and at this point, probably only Uncle Sam can give it to them. So those are the two areas of weakness for 2010 that could create some interesting times, I suppose.
We promised Bill that we would allow him to leave at 12:30, and it's 12:30 because he has been so generous in giving us this time away from the trading floor of PIMCO, which I'm sure they're not happy about. But I want to say, to the question of too big, Bill is the one exception that I know about of the truism that size is the enemy of performance, and Bill has proven that is not necessarily so. So, Bill, I want to thank you so much, investor extraordinaire, for joining us
Thank you,
once
Consuelo.
again for a wise event.
Thanks for coming. Thank you.
Just fantastic.